Doesn't look like too rowdy a crowd here, really, but it's early. You never know. You never know who might come in. So I guess, Ken, are you ready to go anytime?
We're on.
We're on now. Okay, so it's official. I want to say good afternoon and welcome to everybody to a special Earth Day event sponsored by the Moss Creek Advocacy Group. My name is Brian Thorson, and those who don't know me, I'm approaching old-timers status for 10 years, almost 10 years at Moss Creek. There may be, this is a young crowd here. Anybody longer than 10 years?
Oh, we are.
Oh, a few here. Yeah, okay. Before we begin, I'd like to mention we have a donation tip box somewhere around here. Anyway, I mention that because we can always use some help. Our organization doesn't have dues, so we do ask for some donations, and it helps fund our speaker's fee. Our speaker's not here today. Being a private enterprise, for-profit company, he probably won't get a stipend or an honorarium, but we do give it to almost all the other speakers. Okay, I'll just say that. So that would be helpful. You can help out with that. Also, if you want to get more involved in the advocacy group, you can either see me afterwards, or you can see. There's about four of us, five of us here that are advocacy group founders, really. And so pop up your hands, those who, okay, all right. So we're there. Somebody wondered who we are, what we are. Well, as I told somebody here, we have some Nature Club people here, thank you. Some officers, is that better? Okay, we have some officers here, we appreciate that from the Nature Club. I guess we consider ourselves the sort of the science-based branch of the Nature Club. We've got engineers and doctors and scientists and so on. So that's just kind of our thing. So let's turn the clock back to 1970. I know some of you, I'm looking around. I think, well, there's one. I think, Becky, I don't think you were born before 70. I'm sure not, no. Some of you were not born. Some of you were probably in grade school or elementary school, whatever you called it. Some of you were in college like I was during that time. I remember it very well. In April of 1970, I finished my first year of college. Wasn't certain of what my major was going to be, and I vividly remember on the campus commons, there were some tables set up, a banner, and there was brochures given out for the very first Earth Day, April 1970. Anybody here have a recollection of April 1970 Earth Day? A little bit? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you know, it wasn't a big deal, but it had definitely, I mean then, but it was growing, that interest was growing, it had a lot of influence on me. So environmentalism during that time was definitely growing in momentum just prior to the Clean Air and Clean Water Act of 1972, and seemingly intertwined with the anti-nuclear, anti-war movement. I was an ROTC, so I was a little suspicious of that crowd. And I recall, this is my thoughts, that they evolved into the radical, hardcore environmental movement. Now, that's another story for another day, but you knew something was happening. Today's presentation is the third in a series that the Advocacy group has put on the water resources in and around Moss Creek. Last June we had Dr. Ty Petty, marine biologist from USCB, to speak on the Port Royal Sound and its significance to the Low Country. Then in September we had Joe Staten, who was chairman of the Natural Sciences Department at USCB here in Bluffton. He addressed the purpose and importance of the tidal marshes in Beaufort County. How many, show hands, how many was at one or both of those events? Okay, very good, yeah. They were excellent. So this is kind of the continuation of that. So before I introduce our speaker, Doug here, I'm going to, I'd like to talk about the local level here at Moss Creek and where we are in the water quality. How much do we really know about the water quality of our ponds and the effluents we discharge into the marshes that surround us here at Moss Creek? The answer is somewhere between, I wouldn't say zero, but it's pretty small. We don't know a lot. For instance, the Hilton Head Island Stormwater Department takes comprehensive semi-monthly sampling of the ponds and effluents that leave the island, and the town of Bluffton has a couple dozen sampling sites where they regularly monitor the runoff going to the May River, and that's primarily for to make sure we have healthy oysters. Since we are not a part of Hilton Head Island, and we are officially an unincorporated area of Beaufort County, we kind of fall in a gap there. Okay, so we're not a part of those programs, and we have no official in-house programs. So our background knowledge of the water quality is pretty limited. I personally have taken dissolved oxygen, salinity, and water temperatures from several ponds here in Moss Creek, and taken a couple dozen samples and sent them to the Clemson University State Lab for detailed chemical analysis. Prevailing concern of our ponds and lagoons today, from my background and my education here, or experience here, I should say, is the elevated levels of copper found in the treated algae, the water column, and in the bottom pond sediments. Minute quantities of copper. Copper is a micro. It's a micro, not nutrient, micro mineral, heavy metal actually, which we need in our bodies, but in tiny, small quantities. It is known to be toxic, particularly in aquatic environments, and that's why it's commonly used as an herbicide. But minute quantities of copper can be harmful to aquatic life, especially the larval stages of fish, crustaceans, and mollusks. For example, two of our recent fish kills occurred in ponds here within hours of a herbicide treatment. And 1/3 of the water samples collected in the 2022 Greening Grounds pond study exceeded the regulatory limits for fecal coliform for local oyster production. That's probably, Doug has a thing to say about that too, about those fecal coliforms. All right, I'm not going into detail, but if anybody has any questions, about some of these terms I'm using, feel free to ask. At some future presentation, I hope to provide more details on this and other water analysis and review some of the recent fish kills. I will add that this information is not new to our new GM, Scott. He has taken a keen interest in this topic, and he's working on ways to elevate our pond management program. He has actually reserved a slot this fall for the Clemson's 4-day pond managers course, master pond management course, and at this point he's going, and we've got two others here, right? Myself and Carol Hoover are going to be attending. So this is always good. So unfortunately, Scott was going to be here, but he had something come up last minute, so he couldn't be here. So in recognition, please, some recognition to Scott and Mitchell for their efforts. And Mitchell is joining us here, by the way. Without the assurance of clear water, right out here, today's speaker would not have such a story to tell. All right, some of you are aware of Andrew Carmine of Hudson Seafood when he began experimenting with the aquafarming with oysters and crabs a number of years ago. And I think it was Linda. She remembered I think it was 6 or 7 years ago, Andrew was here in this room and talked about, you know, the seafood industry and what he did, and it was that year he had just started what's called Shell Ring Oyster Company, about, it's probably close to 7 years ago. And so he told me recently, he's very, very busy, of course, with running his restaurant. And as his efforts continued to progress, he hired a Long Islander from New York. Hopefully I got that right, Doug, right? Born and raised Long Island? Yeah. Okay. So let's give a nice welcome to Doug Rogers, a true farmer of the Low Country.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me. I am actually partners with Andrew Carmines in Shell Ring Oyster Company. So I was a wild harvest fisherman in New York for about 25 years. I was about to start an oyster farm there out near the Hamptons, and COVID hit, and a friend of mine had been telling me about Hilton Head, Bluffton for years and years, and he goes, why don't you go check it out and see what you think about it. So I came down with my family and we checked it out, fell in love with it, and decided to move down. So when we came down, we were driving over the bridge, and we see oysters everywhere. I'm like, yeah, that's the place for me, right? Anywhere where there's oysters, when you drive over the bridge and you can see them. In New York, something like that, if you saw oysters over the bridge, they'd be gone the next day. Just, so many fishermen and pirates and whatever, they would be gone. Even if they were too small, they'd be gone the next day. So I was like so excited to see oysters everywhere. That made my thinking like, let's move south and let's look into some opportunities down here. And when I got here, even before I got here, so I wanted to talk to people because I knew starting a farm would be quite a process. Everybody I seemed to talk to kept on pointing to Andrew and saying, Andrew had a farm, or Andrew knows about fish, anything with the fishing industry, you should talk to Andrew. So after like the 6th person said that, I said, I should probably go talk to Andrew. So I met Andrew on my first trip actually, and after talking to him for 5 minutes, I think we both hit it off and were like, you know, one way or another we'll probably be working together. So he originally said, how about you work for me and help me get my farm back up and running, because his farm, he had kind of shuttered it because Matthew had wiped him out. He had buried his oyster cages, and at that point he was so busy, he was like, I can't do this by myself. And the guy who was helping him was like, yeah, I'm not doing it by myself either. So they kind of just said, look, let's let it sit, let's think about it for a while, and it just kind of got on the back burner. And when he met me, he's like, I've been waiting for a guy like you to walk in the door forever. Somebody who's sick of shoveling snow out of his boat every winter and breaking ice with his boat to go catch wild stuff, and who actually knew what they were doing. So he said, how about you work for me? And I said, yeah, that's not why I'm here. I'm not here to work for somebody. I want to start my own thing. And then the more I talked to him, the more I got to know him, I said, this might work. You know, he's like, we can sell all the oysters that we grow in the restaurant. We'll make your life easy. I go, that sounds like a plan. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. So it's been working out so far. We're really good friends now, and the partnership's been working out great. We've been back up and operational for about 2.5 years. We're about to actually just picked up seed today, so you guys are actually going to get to see baby oyster seed, which I never had because I'm usually back on the farm the second I get them. But I actually just picked them up in Charleston this morning. We picked up 250,000 oysters this morning, and that'll be the first planting of this year. And probably about a month or two from now, we'll probably plant another 250,000, and then maybe around August, like another 100,000. So this year we're planning on planting at least 600,000 oysters. On top of that, we have almost 500,000 clams growing right now. We planted those about a year and a half ago. This spring, or spring now, I guess, they should be ready, so they'll be on the menu at Hudson's shortly. And happy to say they taste awesome, just like our oysters, because I was a little worried about that. Our clams in Long Island, New York are some of the world's best, so I was a little concerned, but after tasting a few samples, I was like, we're good to go. So I hope you all try them once they're on the menu. They'll probably be called shell ring clams also. And I'll tell you a little bit about our year. So after we became partners and Andrew showed me how he was doing it similar to this, and as soon as I saw it, I said, this is the wrong way. The problem is changing the permitting is quite a hassle in South Carolina. Really, it's a hassle anywhere in the country. To go from this to floating gear, you have to go through 3 different departments, including the Army Corps of Engineers, because if anything's in the water column that a boat can hit, it needs to be verified and made okay, make sure everybody in all the departments thinks it's okay and good idea. So this is kind of his old setup. I kind of modified it a little bit. His cages were this much off the bottom, so that was one of the main reasons we failed the first time. The cage kind of sunk in the sand and smothered the oysters when they died. These cages still sink down, but it takes a lot longer. So it's doable. It's probably one of the hardest ways to farm oysters. We get baby oysters. I'll actually let you guys check that out. So there's probably 500 oysters in here. We'll start front row. That I picked up literally 3 hours ago. So those are babies. Those are like 5 to 6 millimeters big. So we get them at that size or smaller or a little bit bigger, depending on what we need and what the hatchery has and timing for when we have room on the farm and we don't have room. So those are kind of small, so they'll go in this small mesh bag. So really this bag, the only thing that oyster farmers do is protect the oysters. We're kind of babysitters of baby oysters. We just babysit them, keep the crabs away. A crab can eat that little jar of oysters, like 500 oysters, probably 5. I've actually spilled some seed like that size on the farm, like in deep water, and a little blue coat crab will come up and eat them like potato chips. You see it, they're kind of flat, they'll crush it, suck the meat out, drop it, crush it, suck it, and they'll just go like this as they pick them up. They're like, that was a lot of oysters. So this bag is really, if we could, we just throw them on the bottom and let them grow, and then go pick them up afterwards. But this protects them from crabs and stingrays and anything else that wants to eat them. Pretty much when they're that small, everything wants to eat them. So this protects them from predators, fish and crabs. This cage, this metal cage, just keeps it from sitting in the silt or sitting in the sand or mud and suffocating. So about every 5 weeks, those oysters will double in size. So we'll tumble and sort them about every 5 weeks if possible. And so some of those oysters will grow faster than others. The ones that grow bigger will actually start starving the little ones. So if a big one's next to like 5 little ones, it'll just suck in all the food, and the little one will just, it won't die, but it just won't grow fast enough. So we get the big ones, we sort them, get the big ones away from the little ones, and the little ones just take off. They just start growing, grow fast enough. So that's the main thing with oyster farming. Protect them from predators, separating them constantly, get the big ones away from the little ones, and then tumbling with a, it was too big to bring here and show you, it's on my boat, but if you ever go to Hudson, children's boat is right next to the main dining, outside dining area. It's got a big metal tube on it. You take these bags, you dump that into the tube spins, and the oysters will fall out at different sizes.
What does the bag go into? I mean, how?
So, like today, so those are 5 millimeter bags. To put, I'll probably put between 10 and 14,000 oysters in this bag, and that'll be that much. That's 20% of this bag. In about 5 weeks, it'll be up this high. So now I know it's time to sort. Cut it down to this. So this bag will be down to 7,000. Then the next sort will be 3,500. Then the next sort will be 1,700. All the way down to about 200 bags. So when they get into the bigger mesh bags, this bag, this is about as big as our mesh gets. We have a couple of, a little bit bigger, but we use this mainly because it's just easier to use one size mesh. Once they're almost harvest ready, when they go through that tumbling machine, the sorting machine, when they fall out the end, that means they're either market ready or really close. And then we'll put them back in a big mesh bag like this, and we'll put about 200, maybe 300 at the most. And we'll know once they're in these bags that they're pretty close to harvest or ready to harvest.
So what does that bag fit into? I mean, you'll just throw it out into the...
So it goes into this. So we'll put 3 bags into this cage. This cage stays on the farm unless it needs to be repaired, and we'll take the bags out, sort them on the boat, put them right back in. So this cage will hold 3 of these bags. So they kind of sit here and can't fall out. It's kind of actually a little hard to get them in because we don't want them to get pushed out. Some of our older style cages, like Andrew's first cages, they weren't as tight. So the bags are a really hard tie, not even a storm, a really hard tie would actually flip the bags up and they wash it out. And that's what structure for.
So is your farm all in one place? I mean, I know it's probably a secret about where it is.
No, not a secret. It's actually right down the Pinckney Island. If you guys hike on Pinckney Island. It's actually, you guys are probably one of the closest communities to it. So if you go around Pinckney Island all the way to the end, to Port Royal Sound, there's a big sandbar there. Some of the boaters probably know about it. You know, it's like a real giant sandbar. So there's like a little bit of a canal that goes between that sandbar and Pinckney Island. We're right on the northern side of that sandbar, on the inside, like where the little boats can get through, big boats can't get through, but that's right where we are. We get a really awesome tidal flow. We get from 3 different rivers, we get a lot of food sources, and a really good tidal flow, so that means a lot of food going through these bags. And some places around the country can only have like a foot tide, so the water doesn't move that much, so the oysters don't eat as well. So here with that 7 to 8 foot tide, we get a lot of flow in and out. So these bags are constantly getting new food in them. So that's what helps oysters grow so fast here. One of the reasons why I came down here from New York is the oyster takes twice as long in New York to grow than it does here.
How long do they take you?
We can have market-ready oysters in 10 minutes. Not all of them, but like the ones we're planting tomorrow will probably be ready early spring next year. And probably have almost the whole harvest done within 14 months.
Excuse me, you said,
I'm from Maryland on Chesapeake Bay, and our oysters stay submerged.
Yep.
Always.
Yep.
And obviously here at 8-foot tides, do they need to be exposed?
So that's one of the things that a lot of people say that don't eat oysters in the months that don't have water. And especially here in South Carolina, that's one of the main rules a lot of the locals take. So in the summertime, the oysters, all oysters have bacteria. It's just part of life. We all have bacteria in us. But when oysters get really hot, the bacteria levels go really high. And that's when people get sick from eating oysters. So the bank oysters that you can actually see right now are actually banking in the sun. In about a month, DNR will close that wild harvest because they can't control those oysters, how long those oysters are out in the sun. So we get certified by DNR and they actually come out in the farm and see our process, how we do it. When we're ready to harvest our oysters, like I said, we put them in these big mesh bags, we submerge them, and leave them submerged until harvest. So we're actually more strict on ourselves than DNR or something. DNR is on us. DNR requires the oyster to be submerged for 2 weeks. We submerge it for 2 months most of the time. So we do have our smaller oysters out that we let them stay out, but we know we're not going to harvest probably for 8 months. The reason we do that is the air dry and the sun will actually kill algae and seaweed and stuff that makes the oyster grow slower and makes them not look as pretty. And actually little baby oysters will sit on top of the oysters and that doesn't make them look pretty.
if my math is correct, you produce 1 million shellfish per year, and Hudson uses all of those?
Not yet, but we will. Hudson's will probably use at least 700,000. But right now they have five different oysters on the menu. When we can supply the whole menu, we'll probably still keep a bunch, but it'll probably be, the fact that we can harvest in the morning, they'll be on the plate by lunchtime. You can't eat that oyster, I don't care what it's from. The sweetness and the freshness and the amount of brine our local oysters are. I'm happy to say I'm very pleased with the oysters.
So you're going to be shucking them, not just chunky raw, but you'll be shucking them and using it all the recipes?
No, because they're actually too expensive to use for Rockefeller and the stew. So those most of the time, and we're not going to sell them like a Rockefeller oyster is usually bigger. We sell our oysters as a petite oyster, but it's still 3 inches, but it's like a smaller 3-inch oyster. Oyster Rockefeller and stews and some that are, some people do a stuffed oyster too. Those are probably Virginia oysters because they're big, they're a little cheaper, and we're not, for us to leave our oyster that much bigger, it'd probably take 2 years, and at that point, price point for Hudson's would be too expensive. And it's easier to get a Virginia or North Carolina big oyster at a lower price point, and then add stuff to it, and then we're strictly on the half shell.
The big boat that docks next to where people eat, is that the boat you work off of? or-
No, the big boat is a shrimp boat.
I was gonna say, I thought it had shrimp heads. on the
Yeah, so
side.
there's 2 of them. They're actually just both left because the shrimp season's just starting. I think they're coming in on the 24th, which is a couple days from now. So that'll be the first fresh shrimp we'll have. We always have their shrimp year round, but shrimp aren't fresh all the time, so most shrimp you eat are frozen. 95% of the shrimp you eat is frozen. When they're running, we try to sell as much fresh shrimp as possible. So next weekend, there'll probably be fresh shrimp. We freeze it. We do it like, if anybody's ever seen Andy do his seafood spiel, his commitment to fresh fish is beyond anything I've really ever seen. He buys almost, I'd say 90%, 95% of the shrimp from the tumor family that keeps their boats at his docks. He knows where it comes from. He knows those guys. He knows how they process it. And then when he knows the season's almost over, he'll freeze it for like the winter time. So they stop shrimping probably December, and then he'll freeze. He's got a giant freezer on property. He also does stuff that most restaurants can't do because they don't have the space that he has. He has a giant walk-in freezer that he can shrimp it up. He can freeze enough local fresh shrimp to make it through the winter until the season starts again. Most restaurants don't have the space to have a week's worth of shrimp. They're buying shrimp every day, frozen from somewhere else. And he does a lot of stuff that he can't do because he just don't have the space. He buys fish straight off the boat in a place called Cherry Point, actually really close to where we go to the oyster season today. You got a guy that he's been buying fish from for 20 years. The guy goes offshore. The guy got tuna and swordfish. He's got a guy in Merle's Inlet that strictly catches like North Carolina flounder that he brings to Merle's Inlet, and we get it from him. And any which way possible, he tries to get the freshest stuff. And he buys in quantities where he can deal with a boat, where most boats don't want to deal with a restaurant who's going to buy 100 pounds. He can say, I'm going to buy a lot. They're like, all right, then you can call me, but if you're going to buy 50 pounds for, most restaurants are buying 20, 30 pounds for a couple of days. He's doing some crazy numbers. So he can deal with a boat, whereas most restaurants have to deal with a wholesale. Once you get, I've been in the fishing industry my whole life, once you get involved with wholesale, you really never know what you get. Because in New York, I was mainly clams and oysters, and eventually I started selling my clams and oysters to restaurants in Manhattan. And every time I go into a restaurant and I show them my clams, they're like, these look different. I go, yeah, leave them in the fridge for a week and they'll look like a clam you can buy from the wholesale. They go, no way, no way. And then I go back next week, I'm like, I gotta go. I'm like, oh yeah, they're white now. When you brought them in, they had like a darker shell. I go, yeah, they sit in the fridge for a week and then they look like the ones that have been in the wholesale. I go, my clams came out of the water today or yesterday. And you'll taste the difference. And you taste them today and then taste them a week from now, and you'll say, oh, that tastes like my wholesale. Like, this clam I'm having today is different than the one I had 5 days from now. So freshness on any kind of fish, it's a huge thing. It's amazing difference between the two.
So you mentioned clams. Now, clams are done the same way?
So clams are a little different. Clams actually burrow in the mud. So clams, we buy them about the same size. So last year we bought them at, it was like a year and a half ago now. So we missed last year because it got so hot. The hatchery guy, he actually grows them for another big clam farmer up in Virginia because our water gets so warm. He'll grow seed for one of the biggest clam farms in the country. And he'll put them in there and then he sells them. He has these saltwater ponds, he grows them. The water got so warm last year, he had to like pick them up real quick and ship them back to Virginia, so we missed our opportunity. But we bought them about the same size as those oysters that they're still going around. And they like to burrow in the mud, but they also have predators just like oysters. So you put them in a mesh bag. This is like hard plastic. The mesh bag is almost like a bag you use at a laundromat for like feed delicates kind of thing. It's really kind of loose. So we put that right on the bottom, and they'll actually start to bury themselves while they're in the bag. And the bag kind of gets silted over. As long as they don't get too buried, they're protected and they'll grow awesome. So they're actually a little bit easier to take care of because oysters need to be cleaned and tumbled and sorted all the time. Clams kind of like you put them down and just make sure they don't get buried, so it's a little bit easier to process. So.
Have you ever been up to Prince Edward Island and seen how they do with their?
I've never been up there. I've done a lot of research about it. I've seen videos and stuff, but I've never been up there. They do a similar way with oysters and stuff. They actually have to cut holes in ice. Their whole area is frozen over in the wintertime, and they'll cut. I've seen them drive trucks on the ice and cut holes in the ice and pick them up with cranes. It's something I was trying to get away from in New York. Yeah. Any other questions?
Is there enough buoys tied to your nets?
So it's funny because we're intertidal and we're underwater most of the time. We don't technically need to be marked by navigational hazard because we're so low. If we were above 2 feet, we'd have to be marked. We're technically on a sandbar, so if you're on your GPS, you should see a sandbar and you shouldn't drive over it. But it does happen sometimes. As we get bigger, I think we're going to start putting buoys out because right now we're so small, it's kind of, we get really bad luck if it hit us. But when we get bigger, we're going to, and we're actually going to try to be taller. So once we get over 2 feet high, we'll have buoys around the outside. So right now it's kind of, the farm disappears at high tide. You won't really see it until really low tide. It's like a not so low tide when the tide doesn't go really that far out. It's only like sometimes a foot and a half at the dead low tide. These will be still.
Do you have to worry about security?
Yeah, it's always a concern. That's kind of why we like, one, we don't have the buoys on it, and two, it's underwater most of the day. And to actually see it, you have to be out there at dead low tide. You know, and that tide, like when I work at the farm, I'm chasing tide every day, changes every day. So if I work at noon today, I'm working at 1 tomorrow, and 2 the next day, 3 the next day, 4 the next day. So that and the fact that I know a lot of people, and Andrew knows everybody. A bunch of oysters show up somewhere, we'll probably hear about it. So.
You mentioned the impact of Matthew on Andrew's operation earlier. What would the impact of a hurricane coming through here on your
So
operation?
that's one of the biggest problems with bottom gear. If the wind is the right direction, so where the farm is situated right now, the worst wind would be like the back end of a hurricane. If it whipped around like a straight north, come down the Fort Brown Sound towards us. It's not even the wave action of moving the stuff around. It's the siltation of sand moving and burying this. If we don't expect it, if it's warm out, oysters can't be buried for more than probably a day. 2 days, they probably will. They're trying to, because they're so used to pumping when the water's warm that they'll try to pump and then they'll just starve or suffocate. In the wintertime, you could probably bury them for a week and it'd be okay because they're almost like dormant and they're not really pumping. So they're more hardy in the winter. But if the water's 90 degrees like we got last summer, I found a bag buried. One actually popped out of its cage and buried it and picked it up. And I could tell just by shaking it that most of them died in a day. So that's part of the problem with bottom is that it's more susceptible to things like that. We're trying to get permitted for a different kind of bag. They use this a lot in Australia and New Zealand. So this will be suspended off the surface, off the bottom, probably about waist high. That gives you way more leeway with siltation. Problem with this being so low and the feet being so big is that the sand likes to move, and then once it hits here, it kind of builds up, and then once it builds up, it just builds up and it covers the whole thing. So by getting the bag up higher, we've already done a test of one just this high. We're probably going to go this high, but one just this high, the sand just kind of goes right underneath and just keeps moving and it doesn't build up. So the problem with these is that they're too low, sand builds up and it continues to build up and it just covers the whole thing. Some farms, there's a neighbor oyster company that are out of Bluffton. They have a floating farm. It's similar to this, but it has 2 really big floats on it. And this whole cage will be floating on the surface with 6 of these bags instead of 3. So it's about twice as high as this. And then under here, picture 2 really big floats. So they float them on the surface. That gets rid of your siltation problem. You're in the best food area of the water column. Most of the food in the water column is on the surface. So you get really well fed. And then you can actually also flip them. And what we talked about earlier, about air drying. The air drying kills some of the barnacles and stuff that grow on them. So that's kind of one of the better methods. Most of the farms in South Carolina use. It's very labor intensive also. The way I'm hoping to be eventually is this bag in a floating position on the long line. So there'll be a float here, and then I can actually flip it with the boat. There's a machine you can put on the boat that will actually turn the bags over. Because the cages that everybody's using now that are this big, they actually get in the water, jump on top of it, and flip it over. And in the summertime, with a lot of seaweed stuff, they have to do that like a couple times a week. It's pretty labor intensive to do that. You can't do it by yourself, so you have to have 2 people on the boat. There ain't no easy way to do this. I was a wild harvest for my whole life, and I thought that was hard because you can go out and not find anything. So you find a spot, and then kind of, all right, I'm not really making as much money as I want, and you move, find another spot. So there was no, you never really knew what you were going to make every day. So my wife would say, you know, you got to pay the mortgage, what are you going to make today? Wind could blow, and I just might not happen today. It was one of the main reasons why I started looking at oyster farming. At least I have some control. I know what I plant. I know what what the survival rate is basically, and without any major catastrophes, I kind of know what I'm going to harvest. But it's still a labor of love because I love being on the water, but it is a lot of labor. So when you see the price of oysters in the store, and at some point we do oyster tours, and we'll let you guys try to flip some of your cages over and see how hard it is, and you'll say, oh yeah, maybe it's worth pretty much.
Are your oysters, they're not mature enough to spawn before you harvest them?
So I should look that up. I think oysters after like 4 or 5 months, like after their first winter, I think they can spawn. We grow it's called a triploid oyster. So a triploid oyster doesn't spawn at all. So it's selectively bred to not spawn. So there's oysters, regular bank oysters called a diploid. And then there's 2 other oysters that are found in nature called a triploid and a quadroid. And it's a lot of science and mumbo jumbo, but it's they just naturally occur. They just don't occur that often. So the triploid doesn't mass produce. It doesn't spawn at all. Quadroid does spawn, but it only spawns triploids. So if you get a diploid and a quadroid to meet in the water column or in a hatchery, they'll make a triploid. The triploid doesn't spawn, which is great for me because now my oysters stay plump in the summer, because a lot of times you'll eat an oyster that's really flat in the summer, most likely a diploid that just spawned. And that means that the meat will be really skinny, it'll be watery, and like, wow, that oyster really was that good. But if you would have had that oyster in the middle of the winter, the crop was awesome. So triploid, most farmers are growing triploids just because of that reason, and the fact that since they're not spawning, they use all their energy to grow faster. So a triploid oyster, in most cases, grows faster, tastes the same, tastes better than summer.
What is the average size of your mature oyster?
We're trying to get to 3 inches. So 3 inches is about, that finger is exactly 3 inches. I actually use that finger to measure when I don't have my gauge on it.
Is that smaller than the wild oysters out here?
I actually have some here. I think you guys can try them afterwards. So we actually don't have that many where we like them. So we kind of call these like not ready for prime time, but there's what's on here, so I want you to try them. So this is that's about a 3-inch oyster. So we'd like them to be at least that wide and 3 inches long. So like this one's a little skinny. So the bank oysters you see we call them bunny ears because they like to grow up when when they're in a oyster bank, they're kind of reaching for food. So they're all trying to, and they're so tightly packed together that they're trying to like outreach the oyster next to them, so they get like really skinny. And if you ever do an oyster roast, you'll see they're all clustered together and all kind of like really narrow but long. We call them bunny oysters. And what we're trying to do is trying to get them really fat, like deep cup, so that means more meat. So how we get a deeper cup is tumble with tumble machine, or if your cages can tumble with tide. Every time this oyster closes, the abdominal muscle gets bigger, and the more tumbling action you get, the deeper the cup. So you see an oyster that's really flat, probably doesn't move around too much, probably just going to sit there and it just will grow flat, just grow it, try to reach out and get as much more food as it can. An oyster with a deeper cup, he's probably been tumbled with like that much pretty deep for a little oyster. It's been tumbled more than that. So every time it closes, that muscle, kind of like a weightlifter, right? He's growing up and then
Holds up.
yeah, it bulks up, and then the closing opening, it'll just eventually snap the shell. It'll be, you know, we love them all to be a little bit, probably like that big and about that deep. That's a nice deep cup. But it is, you know, Mother Nature's doing this thing. They're all different. They never come out looking exactly the same. As much as we'd like them to be all very uniform, there's still a lot of stuff that we can't control. It's not work on.
So,
Who gets to keep all the pearls?
What's that?
Who gets to keep the pearls?
The shucker finds it, he gets it. The person I actually found that my first trip here, I went to Captain Woody's, and I actually got a pearl in my oyster. It was tiny, it was like a grain of sand, but it was nice and round, and I'm like, that's not a sign to move the block.
That was salted in there.
I don't think it was local oyster, I think it was very ridiculous, but still a sign.
so that's my question. How different are oysters here in South Carolina versus the North Atlantic versus the Pacific versus South America and all that?
So this oyster is Virginia oyster. It's pretty much this same oyster, same species, is the same oyster from Canada all the way to the Gulf in Texas. So even though they all look different, if it's an East Coast oyster, you'll see in the menu, it's East Coast oyster. That means it is the same species, but I can take this oyster and grow it out in the sound or grow it back here and it'll look different, just the way the tides flow and the way it's been set in the environment. And it also tastes different. It's kind of like wine. Like, they call it like terroir in wine. It's terroir. I can't say it, but it's like the same thing in wine. Like I can grow an oyster right here next to your dock. It'll taste different than my oyster out in Port Royal Sound. They pick up different nutrients, different minerals, and if you actually, my palate's not that strict, but you can tell the different salinity levels, different minerals eating, different algae that's might come through here that doesn't come through by Port Royal Sound. So if you ever get oysters, I always say like some people get like 3 of these, 3 of those, 3 of these. Always have the first one take it, no sauce, no nothing. Taste it, see what you think about it, and then try the next one and say, oh, that's different. That one was salty with this one. This one had more of a mineral taste. But they're all the same species, unless you get the West Coast. West Coast is a totally different species, and Europe has a different species too. So pretty much anything grown on the East Coast is the same species.
Is there any need, probably not yours, that farm the natural oysters to test for heavy metals or anything like that? Are you required?
We are not at the moment. Best thing, my favorite thing about an oyster is when I get that question, especially from my kids, like, oh, it's like, they can say it's a filter, like, so it's filtering all the dirt out, what happens to the dirt? The coolest thing about an oyster is that it doesn't have a brain, but it knows what it wants to eat and what it doesn't. So it'll filter the nutrients it wants, and then it's called pseudo-feces. Everything like the silt, like there's so much silt in the water here, it knows it doesn't want to eat the silt. So before that hits its stomach, it'll actually expel it into like a little bit of a slime on the outside of the shell. You feel that sometimes if you ever pick oysters, you like a little bit of slime on it. So that's actually pseudo-feces, like fake feces. So all the stuff it didn't want to digest, and it gets that rid of that quick. So that gets deposited into the substrate. And then the stuff it actually does eat, if it does have some of that stuff, the next coolest thing is that oysters don't keep anything in their system for more than like 12 hours. So whatever it eats goes out with the next tide. So it's constantly flushing itself. So, like, we're talking about DNR making me keep my oysters suspended for 24 hours for 2 weeks before I do summer harvest. They've done studies on Virginia oysters looking for a certain bacteria that grows really fast when it gets hot, and they put it in the sun, let it heat up, and the bacteria levels go up 20 times. They put it back in the water and tested that oyster like the next tide, and the bacterial level was back to normal in 1 minute. So that's the cool thing about oysters. Even though it does filter everything it filters pretty much gets pushed right back out and goes into the silt and the mud. And they don't really hold too much in it.
The clams that you harvest, are they cherry stone or little neck, or what are they?
There will be a little neck.
Little
Let
neck.
them grow up, they'll grow up to cherry stone, but little necks and cherry stones are all the same species. It's just you let them get bigger. But we're probably going to sell them at about 1 inch size, like little neck size. But some of them will make it through, like by the time we process them, some grow faster than others. Like I just got some for Seafood Fest, just for some people to try. And some were perfect little necks and some were almost a top neck. So there'll be a variety of sizes, but we want to sell them at little neck size.
I believe one of the universities down here was collecting the shells from restaurants and building
Yeah, so
reefs, like a reef.
Yeah, so DNR does it. I think Georgia does it too. DNR, we've actually helped DNR build one right over the boat ramp when you first get on the hill pad. Me and Andrew went out there about 2 years ago now. And going over the bridge, you look to the right where the boat ramp is. If you're heading on the island, you'll see 2 signs on the beach. And you'll see a strip of oyster shell. So the main reason all those grasses are there is because the oyster shell is there. If you took away that oyster shell, those grasses would eventually just be washed away, kind of like the sediment problem that I have with my cage. If there's no oyster shell to kind of stop the sand from moving, it'll move, and it'll just, all that grass will just get washed away. So if you had a clam or oyster harvester come out and take out that corner right there and take away all the oysters, that eventually that grass might come down.
I wondered if they were used for anything to show.
Back in the day, they used to use them for all kinds of things. Now they're actually just getting harder and harder to get because there are so many people that want to do restoration projects. Up in New York, we were trying to get oyster shell to Virginia to restore some of our habitat. And it actually got 2. They used to want to give it away, especially the oyster farmers in Virginia because they had so much shell. They did a lot of shucking in Virginia and sold them pretty shuck, like fried oysters and stuff. So they had so much shell that they were like, come get it. But as more and more states got into restoration projects, the price of shell just grew, and now it's like, you got to run around to the restaurants to get it, because otherwise it's just cost prohibitive. If you see all around Hudson's, I mean, Hudson's is built on oyster mile, but each stage of all the shell is pretty much surrounding the restaurant. And at some point, when the pile gets too hot, we'll put it out in some sort of restoration project.
You had talked about how the oysters filter, and there's been some articles, information about the May River having problems with water quality. Is that something that is of a concern to you here? And
it sort of is. When I first got here, one of the guys I talked to was Larry Cooper, who's now the mayor. He wasn't when I talked to him, but I told him how I had done restoration projects up in New York, and I was vice president of my own town oyster bed. That's kind of, I'm a fisherman from a town called Oyster Bay. I've been on plants of oyster my whole life, so I'm a pretty shelly guy. I told him about some of the restoration projects we did up there, and he's like, yeah, I'm concerned with the May River. He's like, because he actually owns oyster leases of wild oysters in the May River. Most of them, he's got more concerned about it than anybody, because those are his beds that he can't work, mainly because it's cesspools and RV parks and stuff that are just flushes into the river. So me and Andrew were just talking about how Richland or Jasper County is about to do a giant development Bluffton did a pretty good job of putting in septic everywhere, sewers in everywhere. But if you put a giant development in with just cesspools, that just won't work. So the funny thing is, the sewage stuff actually isn't bad for shellfish, it's just bad for us. So we eat the shellfish that come out of those polluted waters. It makes us sick. It doesn't make the oysters sick. Clam oysters actually love that kind of feces in the water and dirty water. They actually like that. They grow up on it. The problem is when guys will harvest it in areas where they're not supposed to, people get sick. And that happens. So those areas that are closed, the oyster populations go crazy high because nobody's thinning out the crop. And then you see guys out with flashlights doing the wrong thing, and you get sick, and everybody gets sick. Oysters get sick. Oysters in the wrong spot, you can sit down on that, you get oysters.
Talking about collecting oyster shells, I'll just put in a plug. The Coastal Discovery Museum in the backside as you drive in at Honeycomb
Yep.
collects oyster shells. I don't know if that's DNR or not.
Yeah, that's
But
actually where we
for
pick
anybody
up.
with a private party that has
Yeah.
leftover oyster shells, please take them there.
Yeah, if you ever have a shelf in your house and you have a oyster roast or something, you can bring that as a big pile. You just pop them there, and then eventually, once the pile is big enough, they'll have a bunch of volunteers come out, and they'll bag them up, and then they'll ask around and see who needs an oyster reef to protect some shoreline somewhere, and that's what kind of the Navy did. They, I don't know how they pick the spots, but you know, it's a put them here, you blend, put the bags down. If you're ever over there and want to walk down and see how many, I have actually reading to do it, I want to see how many oysters actually growing on the old oyster shell. So that's the idea. They'll put, you know, 2 buckets full in a, not a bag like this, but more of like an onion bag. And they'll put that onion bag with oyster shells on the beach, and then new oysters will grow on it, and then it'll expand to a new oyster reef. And then everything behind it will fill in, and you'll get this grass coming behind it. So they'll pick spots where there's not that seagrass, where they want more seagrass. And they're always looking for volunteers, I know. So I've done it. If you ever look into it, it's actually kind of hard work if you want to do some hard work on it, and look up the honest.
Well, I think it was a long time ago, all the oyster breaks on some of the island, that where they were probably just dumping oyster shells on them.
So a lot of it was kind of funny to me because in New York, everything was like public land. There was very few, they call them culture leases here, where people own, like that, the whole Skull Creek is owned by one guy who's owned it for 100 years. And it's great for him, but if somebody like me who's coming into fishery as a new guy, there's no place really for me to work. But the responsibility of that guy owning it, he's supposed to put, for every acre, he's supposed to put down 50 bushels of oyster shell every year. Or break down the existing shell down to 5 months. Which some guys do, some guys don't. You know, has a lot on their plate. They don't really police it as well as I think they should. I've heard about guys losing their culture permit for not harvesting enough oysters, and then I've heard people losing their culture permit for over-harvesting. So it's kind of like whichever way the wind blows that day, you know, makes the decision. And but I think they have a lot more stuff on their plate to understand, and that's one of the least controls. I just talked to a guy up in St. Helens, and he actually has a little oyster farm. He's just getting going, and he's like, I used to have a culture permit, and COVID and stuff, I had nowhere to sell them, and you know, I came and said, you're not harvesting enough, so I'm going to take it away. It's like, it's COVID, like everything was closed, I couldn't sell it. They didn't want to hear it, so it was something that had been in his family for quite a while. He lost it, and I'm like, that's another subject.
I know like Dawes Island has a lot of breaks, oyster breaks, even in Skull Creek, a lot of reefs up there across.
Yeah, so there's one guy that actually sells the cluster oyster that Hudson sells for their roasted oyster buckets. It's one guy, and they get their oysters from right in front of the restaurant pretty much. And he's got named Jerome. He's been doing it for 50 years. His family's been doing it, and he takes just enough of what he needs. He's not like some farmers will go out and just take, like I said, New York, they just take everything that's gone, and then worry about the next batch 20 years from now. But if you look in Skull Creek, right around the Hudson's, on the left, on the Pinky side, all that, there's all Jerome land. You see oysters everywhere. And that's all it is. He takes just enough. He knows what to move. He shell where it needs to be for the next batch of oysters. So some people do it right, and some people don't. You can kind of tell who's doing it right when you see a lot of oysters respond. Any other questions?
Does Hudson still serving soft shells?
I think you missed it right on the day.
Huh?
We just closed it.
You just closed it, okay.
We had our last crab in the tank Saturday, and then the ones we shed out, we probably went through on Monday. I think we got it sold the last day yesterday.
You want to just spend a few minutes just discussing that? I think it'd be interesting
Sure.
to learn about that.
So one of the things that when I first met Andrew was, the first thing that I would talk to him was like, starting an oyster farm is going to take a couple of years to get my oyster farm running. I have to make money somehow. Will you buy fish if I go catch it? He goes, absolutely. But that's how we got the conversation. But I have an oyster farm that needs to be run. That's how that conversation started. So I said, all right, that's fine. And then we're working the oyster farm together. We talk weekly, and then one day he's like, how about you come work for me and help me get fresh fish? I go, no, I don't want to work for you. It's not going to happen. After the fifth or sixth time he asked me, and me not making any money for like a year and a half. All right, let's see what we can do. And so one of the things I take care of is the soft shell crab season, which we just finished. So soft shell crabs are blue claw crabs that just shed their shell. And Hudson's actually puts the tanks in their packing house. It's like a barn kind of on the docks that used to be used for weighing shrimp and stuff back in the day. And they'll fill that whole room with tanks, probably 5 times the size of this table. And they'll have a crabber bring us crabs that they know are about to shed. And you pump water from the river right outside the restaurant into the tables. And just have somebody babysit the crabs 24 hours a day until they come out. As soon as they come out, they go in the cooler, and then they go in the kitchen. So if you missed it, I'm sorry, but they're probably the best soft crabs you'll ever have. They're so soft. Because most crabbers, some crabbers do it inland, they'll do the same set of kind of we had, but they'll do it inland somewhere. And they don't know where their crabs are going to go. So they might ship them to Maine, they might ship them to California. So the crabs have to be hardier. So they'll leave them in the water longer. So as soon as the soft shell crab sheds its shell, it's already starting to grow its new shell. So the longer you leave it in the water, the tougher the skin gets. So Hudson's pulls it right out as soon as you shed. So it's the softest it'll ever be. Somebody who's shipping their crab somewhere, they need to live in a cardboard box for a week. Because if a restaurant gets it and they open the box, the crab's not alive, they won't buy it. Because at that point, they go, this crab has been dead for a month. It has to be alive for us to purchase it. So commercial guys who are shipping them will leave them in the water up to 4 hours, and then they get like a, we call it like a wet loose leaf shell. You bite into it, like that texture, and then that's kind of why Andrew started doing what he was doing. Like, people are complaining about the texture, and let's see if we can do it better. And he's doing better, so it's pretty awesome.
I was there last week and had a wonderful soft shell crab, but there was a guy in tanks. It was a 24-hour operation. He was just feeling around, and this one was ready to open, and he was getting bigger, and he put it in this tank, and the entire time we were there, he just had his hands in the water.
Somebody, like, last year I was there like all day, and then I never did nights, I never watched it. They have a guy that was there from 7 to 7. And you think like, oh, you just check it once and then you can like go take a nap. But like, when you start doing like, oh, there's another one. Like, oh, there's one. At any given time, there's 3,000 crabs. So every morning they go through every crab. I would do that sometimes, and you feel the corner, like the blue claw crab has points at the end of its shell. And you pick up a crab during called peeler season, and you feel the point. There's like a little crack under it. Like, oh, that's called a crack. Crack goes in the crack tank. Crack tank means it's going to probably shed in the next 2 days, 24 hours. And then once they get to a point, they actually bust out of the back of their shell. You'll see like a black line. We'll call that a buster. And that goes into the last tank, where the waders hang out. And that means it's going to shed today. It's going to come out today. So we do that just so you don't have to be eagle eye on all the other tanks. And then the crack tanks, some might come out, but the buster tanks, like, yeah, they're coming out today.
don't have to pick those like you do with full crab.
Social crab, that's why people go crazy when we eat the whole thing. The claws are soft.
Good luck with that,
You know,
but anyway.
They do a little bit of feeding, they take, crabs actually have gills, you pull up the side of the shell, they pull the gills out, they cut some little, couple other little hard parts off, and we just eat the rest of it.
Well, I can relate a story with, Barbara and I were there, that's a few weeks ago, and I probably had soft shell crabs half dozen times in my life as well, but this was incredible. The one, I don't know what the name of it is on the menu, but you get a soft shell crab sauteed, lots of butter, cook out, some nice spices, and then they put lump crab on top of it, and then they pour a béarnaise sauce on it. Oh my gosh, I mean, it was like nothing.
Yeah, they're not, like Hudson's isn't fancy, but the fish are super fresh. The chef's pretty awesome. You're not gonna get like a Michelin star at Hudson's, but you can't eat their fish is about as fresh as it's gonna be anywhere. And they know how to do it. They know how to, and Andrew works really hard. Like oyster farm is part of that, the soft shell crabs is part of that, clams is part of that. Sending me to go to pick up swordfish in Cherry Point is part of it. Like it's prides himself on having the freshest fish.
Yeah, I'm not rushing, but I was told this room is going to be used by another group at 5:30.
Okay.
We check time, but.
Oh, yeah. We try to open some oysters quick, and you guys can try them and let me know what you think about it.
Anybody think that's a good idea?
So a lot of northerners like a mignette sauce. A lot of southerners haven't even ever heard of that. It's like a chopped up onion and spice, like vinaigrette, you put on oysters. I have that, and then I have like a really spicy cocktail sauce.
One thing Doug said earlier when first met him, he goes, hey, cocktail